I think there's big change. I think that the industry is changing. I think we talked about it a lot today in respect of how corporates are dealing with AV. I think it's slowly but surely being brought into IT, whether that's the right place to put it or not. I think there are various examples of bigger organisations who have got multimedia departments which sit between the two organisations, and I think that's possibly the way the future is for AV as an industry. I think it's very hard for smaller organisations to try and get that whole piece right of who owns it. I think IT is very system driven, and they don't really understand the whole softer part of AV. And I think again that softer sell, that consultative sell, is going to be far more important for the way the industry moves forward.
I mean, it's something that's we've met before, that AV people seem far better at the kind of face-to-face interaction than IT teams ever were. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people in IT are very much driven on delivering a box, and AV is very much about it's an experiential thing, and so you do have a much softer element to the way you consult, the way that you approach clients, and you also have a very broad understanding of building structure, how the environment influences how someone will use a space. And I think, as the industry grows and matures, I think that will develop. And I think IT will eventually learn that is how things are going to move forwards.
Tell me how your role has changed over the years.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, at the beginning, things in AV were a lot simpler. There were a lot less items around, and the end user was a lot less interested in actually playing with it himself. Rather, he was more scared of it, I think. Where we are now is that the end user is embracing new technology to a point where he wants to make it work in a big way, and it's our job really now to find ways of integrating it so that it's much easier for the end user to embrace.
Okay.
I do a lot of work for Merlin Entertainments, who now own Madame Tussauds and Sea Life Centres around the world. And one of the first big projects I did for them was a complete new build for Madame Tussauds in Shanghai. And the reason I enjoyed it so much is that they gave me the total design of the AV infrastructure from a whole new build right the way ground floor up, which allowed me then the opportunity to introduce centralised control and almost to a point teach the local Chinese people how certain things worked and bring them a bit into the 21st century, albeit on a local level.
And what's your favourite bit of technology?
Oh, at this moment in time, probably the iPad. I suppose everybody says it, but it's more a question of making it work with different pieces of kit. So, for example, a show control system, to write the front end to allow that to be used in a really nice, user-friendly way with people who know what an iPad is.
So it's a work tool and a personal tool?
Absolutely. I think the industry generally is on the up. I think it will move from budgetary consciousness through to a more dynamic future-proofing and what do we need for the future as opposed to what do we need for just right now.
Yeah.
I knew as soon as products started to say they were IP ready, I knew it was going to go down that route.
Right.
So things like video, networking, managing equipment, monitoring stats, etc. It was what the IT sector has been doing for years. So yeah.
What's been your favourite project to work on and why?
My favourite project was Yell down in Reading. I think it was because I started speaking to them in 2006, got to know the clients, got appointed beginning of 2009, and then really saw it sort of from a small project, us being appointed sort of for just two parts of a project, cabling and AV, and then ended up growing that account to full-on project management, still friends with the property director, still friends with, you know, the AV guys down there. So
It's a very long process, isn't it, between
yeah,
say, start and finish?
Yeah.
Almost. There's probably no finish as well. But
no, I mean my role is business development, so I'll, you know, get a sniff in the market that someone's going to relocate. So you try and find out who obviously the end users are, the project team, so the project managers, the QSs, the interior designers, and then really go from there.
Sure.
So but that was my best one because I was on site for 5 months and got to know.
so really part of the team.
I was part of the team, so I'd say that was my favourite project.
Great.
Quite sad that it finished, but yeah.
I've now decided to go on my own, just with one business partner, and we're looking at basically new technology, interaction, augmented reality, gesture-based interfaces where doing this would have an effect on a piece of video, eye tracking, so the camera would track my eyes as I move around the shop, and we're looking at all those sort of areas. But in addition to that, I'm doing consultancy still for the general market. And my main customer at the moment does large-scale hologram projection, and that's taking me around the world, helping them with integration projects. The most challenging project was only a few years ago, and that was a project for the Natural History Museum, which took something about 2 years from beginning to end. And we were actually engaged really early on by the museum, and by complete coincidence, it was a project being done by BBC Research Department as well. And so I was working with some of my old colleagues, and it was an augmented reality environment. It was a theatre that sat 85 to 90 people, where each person had their own individual augmented reality experience. But the theatre had to be a traditional lecture theatre. It also had to be a totally automated multimedia presentation area, and it had 5 high-definition screens, and every single piece of equipment was automated. So it had to work as an automated 5-camera studio. It had to work as a multimedia environment where you just sat down and watched films, and it had to work as an augmented reality where each user had a handheld screen where they got another layer that they could see when they were looking into the room, and that could be a dinosaur walking around the room, or a prehistoric man appeared to be walking around the stage in the room. When they held their screen up, they looked through the screen like looking through a window, but there'd be another layer on that screen. And the room also had to be used as a traditional high-definition studio, and in fact it was used by the BBC to record a pre-G8 summit at the time with Gordon Brown, who was still in power at the time. And the BBC just literally connected their equipment to the output of the studio and used the studio, which was a great compliment. The most impressive bit of technology, well, yes, I've used the iPad, and there's no doubt it's absolutely gorgeous, especially the new iPad with the high-definition screen, but it's fit for purpose. It's lovely as something you use on the train to read the newspaper. It's lovely for something you might have in the evening where you want to watch a bit of online television or read the news. But as regards using it as an AV controller, if you drop it once or twice, it's not going to survive. So there are similar products that do the same function that are much more robust, and I think we're going to increasingly see that market blur. In terms of really good technology, that's an interesting question. The company I'm working for does some amazing stuff with holograms, and it's absolutely bowling over the audiences that are seeing it. I think the one that most people know well, it was a rap star called Tupac, who's no longer alive, and they recreated an avatar of Tupac. It was projected on stage as a hologram, and the audience all thought it was a live performance. And that was done with James Cameron of Avatar.
So industry's got further to go, everything's green in the garden?
There's a lot of challenges. Products are getting cheaper and cheaper, and as the products get cheaper, the people that make money out of it have to sell more to make money. The margins are quite low because of internet shopping, and so the systems integrator has got quite a challenge on where they make margin, and really the margin's got to come from professional services. People are much more prepared to pay for expertise, and therefore we've got to sell our expertise and not equipment.
IPTV, I think, as a delivery medium, as a platform for distribution and for interactivity, is just going to go, sky high, way beyond where it already is. I think organisations are only just beginning to grasp the potential for IPTV, digital signage, and using the IP network as a multimedia interface rather than just as some means of delivering a TV channel. Yeah, that's the most impressive. My iPhone. It's simple. It doesn't bother me with the technology that it's using. It's an ultimate user interface. I could use it straight out of the box. I could use it without anybody telling me how it operated. It was intuitive, it was easy to understand. I didn't have to read a manual. I took it home, fired it up, and got online, and that was it. And if every hardware device that came onto the market was that straightforward and that powerful, we'd really be motoring. The biggest challenge, I think, for the industry is to properly handle the transition out of analog into digital. We're still in the position where we are accommodating legacy technology. That will continue for a little while. It's where we will be when we've made that final transition and what the standards will be. I don't think we've got there yet.